Tyranny podcast. Not much to talk about. I just can't sleep and I work third shift, so I thought I'd hop on here. There is a way I can see comments from Facebook and YouTube, so it doesn't really matter which one you're on. And I figure we just talk about if somebody joins, we can just talk about whatever they want to talk about. Since the everything that's kind of going on today is the same thing that was going on yesterday, just more stupid shit from the FBI and ATF. I've seen some videos about some of the new IRS recruits, but I don't know how legitimate those are because I would have to believe that not all of them are credible. Because if they are, maybe we don't have as much to worry about as we thought, but I don't think that's the case. I think they, at the very least, they have a team that is more or less a contingency plan. So while we wait for somebody to join, if somebody joins, I figured we could talk about some of the things the ATF is doing regarding singling out states that they know they can get away with their bullshit. And normally I would say it's a states' right thing that the states that are allowing the ATF to go in and kind of do what they're doing, that it would kind of be free game. Because if the states want to let that happen, then so be it. And I believe that's the way it's kind of going down. But at the same time, the ATF is a federal agency. So it is taking federal kind of not legislation, but federal oversight to go into certain states and take advantage of the citizens of that state. And I think what we're going to have is just like in California, where you have the state just completely mishandling of the tax dollar and the citizens and law and order. You're going to have where the ATF, the FBI, and the IRS start going into these states that they know they can get away with their overreach. And I think at some point you're going to have those citizens of those states start leaving. Massachusetts is a big one. I believe it was just yesterday a guy had one of the triggers the ATF is trying to just arbitrarily say that it makes your gun a machine gun, which doesn't even make sense by the ATF's own definition of a machine gun. It doesn't make sense, but they're doing it anyways. And I was watching kind of a YouTube video about this, and he brought up a good question. How did the ATF know that this guy was uh, had that trigger in his possession? And this means a few things. One, I believe in Massachusetts they do have a registry, so that's why he got all his shit janked or ganked from his house. They didn't just take his trigger that was considered a machine gun or whatever. They're trying to say because he has broken the law, therefore he has opened a case up against himself, which means if to be determined he is guilty, he would lose access to all those firearms. And even though he hasn't been proven guilty yet, they decided to take all his shit anyways. Now, this is not any jurisdiction of the ATF's. And in the video, all I seen was ATF agents. So I don't know how closely the Massachusetts police or sheriffs were involved. I just know that it seems to be in a lot of cases where the ATF has these arbitrary laws that they just put into place without legislation. They're going to places like Massachusetts. And what's going to happen is Massachusetts specifically is going to start losing their citizenry that believe in the Constitution, and it's just going to become something like what we have in California, where it's more or less a cesspool for this leftist ideology. And in I guess in a lot of ways it doesn't really matter. I don't live in Massachusetts, and I would imagine that the people who are concerned with their well-being when it comes to their constitutional rights, they can just get the hell out of there. But what we're going to run into is we're going to run into these states kind of being isolated. And I believe if we keep going down the same route we're headed down at the moment, these states are going to try to gain more power and more access to controlling Congress and the legislation that gets passed, because they're going to be some of the only states that have this ideology. And they have to do it in a certain allotted time frame because they're in power now. And they know that the longer they take, or the more time that they start losing to pass some of this nonsense, the less power and sway they will have at the federal level. And you're already starting to see it with Liz Cheney losing her primary. It's not just going to be a Democrat Republican thing. It's going to be a leftist ideology thing, because for all intensive purposes, got a little bit of pop on the mic. All intensive purposes, Liz Cheney was not a Republican. And that brings up a whole nother concept and kind of something we have to worry about in the future. The more that we go down this rabbit hole where leftists and Democrats for now start to get voted out, and people start leaving their states where they're just completely ruled by Democrats, those same Democrats have no moral obligation to keep that D in front of their name, and they will start running as Republicans. We have already seen it. They have also another trick up their sleeve besides Democrats running for a Republican. They also will go into a um, more leftist ideology ran city, and they will prop up and donate to the most extreme candidate on the right, therefore making the Democratic front runner look a little bit more moderate, when we know that this is just not the case. However, most citizens today still believe that there are moderates on both sides, and I don't think that is the case, because we are truly starting to see a two-party system. Now, I know for a long time people have talked about how the two-party system has failed the United States. And their kind of work around this was to try to usher in a libertarian party or an independent party to never very much success. So it seems as if we are stuck with this two-party system, but to maybe even just 5 years ago, the two-party system still had moderates running in it. Up until 2020, people still thought that Joe Biden himself was a moderate, and that was just not the case. It is just mind games that the one side or the other is playing with the more normal, less politically inclined part of our country is being duped by. And so this is really where it's going to start to get muddy. And definitely in places like Texas, where we might see Texas turn blue for the first time. Well, why is that going to be? Well, it's going to be because most people that pay attention to politics in Texas know that the independent party there will have no success. So the citizens of Texas feel as if they vote for an independent party or a libertarian party, that they are throwing their vote away. And no matter how much libertarians would like to say that this still accomplishes something, it doesn't accomplish something in the now. It only accomplishes that you can show that the Libertarian Party is gaining, in some cases, popularity amongst certain states and certain counties. But it never seems to be that they get voted into office. Even people that are really looked up to by libertarians, the Rand and Ron Pauls of the world, they run as Republicans because they can win as Republicans. So, as much as we would like to believe that this two-party system has doomed our country, the reason that it is still in play, the reason that it is still such an issue when it comes to politics is not because of the politicians running, but because of the people who vote for those politicians. And this is really going to come to bite us in the ass here. I would almost imagine by the time 2024 gets here that some of those Democrats will have caught on and started to double agent us. They will start to run as a Republican in some of the more moderate counties within the states, and they will regain control of some of the better counties and states amongst America. And I believe that two of the biggest places that are going to fall victim to this are Florida and Texas. Well, why do I believe that it's going to be Florida and Texas? Well, for one, they don't have a lot of state tax things, so a lot of businesses flock to both of those states, which brings in jobs and higher wages. So the people that live there have an easier time maintaining their everyday needs. Not only that, but you will also have people from Massachusetts and California flee those Democrat destroyed states to go to Republican havens. Someone leaving California isn't going to go to another Democrat cesspool. They're going to go to a more Republican controlled state. But they never leave their ideologies behind. They always want to make a compromise as if that's not what destroyed their state in the first place. So these Democrats that flee places like California and Massachusetts are going to go to havens, conservative grace havens like Florida and Texas, and then they're going to come to those places with the population that has already prospered and try to seek a compromise, to say that they are only there to be moderates, that some of these conservative ideologies that have brought their states up in popularity and allowed those citizens of those states to prosper should change. And this is a very ridiculous idea. This is where you're going to start to see the old guard or the old population of states like Florida and Texas start to get a little bit more abrasive to accepting these people from places like California and Massachusetts. So as much as we would like to hope for the best and prepare for the worst, I think it's actually going to usher in a more hastier and uh, conflictive, if that's even a word, division amongst these states. And if you really think about it, this is some heavy uh, social and mental gymnastics the Democratic Party is playing. They have seen that what they truly believe in cannot have a state prosper in the ways that they would like. And now that it is almost too late to turn back and return and try to maintain some of that voter base and some of that population amongst those Democrat states, they have decided to go full throttle and flood the more popular conservative states with these Democrats or so they would like to believe, moderates, even though that's not what they are, into these amazing conservative states that will soon, I believe, as soon as 2024, go from conservative safe havens to political battlegrounds, where we will, at the very least, see some of these states turn purple. And so that's not a good thing either, because if you haven't noticed, the Democrats' game plan as uh, to date, more so than any of the other tricks they are playing, they are trying to stop Donald Trump from running for president at all cost come 2024. And if you think about it, that's really in their best interest. No matter how much it looks like they're being insane or that they're wasting tax dollars, what they're actually doing is they are preserving their lifelines. They are preserving everything that they have worked for however long they have been a politician. Because once Donald Trump announces that he's running for president in 2024, unless the Democratic Party is successful at indicting Donald Trump and making it some type of obstacle where Donald Trump cannot legally run for president in 2024, as soon as he announces, it is going to be game over. No matter how much you would like to believe, if Donald Trump runs as a president in 2024, he will win. That is just the facts. No matter how you look at it, no matter how you turn the tables, he is almost in a position that he was in 2018, where he said, I could go in the middle of Times Square and just shoot somebody and get away with it. That is pretty much where Donald Trump is in this state of politics. They have ruined any kind of image that they would hope to retain when it comes to battling socially, culturally, and legally in any shape or form in any system against Donald Trump. Now, one of the things that's slowing this down, if you're asking yourself, well, if that's the case, why hasn't Donald Trump decided to announce that he's running for president? Well, because he doesn't really have anything to gain from doing it too early. He can do it, as I believe, as late as, mid 2023. And as long as he does not announce that he is running for president in 2024, the RNC will continue to pay his legal bills fighting off the Democrats, because the Democrats will continue to fight him up until and maybe even after Election Day. So it's really, how much money does Donald Trump have to fend off the Democratic Party until he is awarded the presidency? So if Donald Trump thinks he can financially survive on his own in court against the Democrats beginning 2023, that's when you will see him announce, because there are far too many people in the RNC, a majority, if you will, that do not like Donald Trump. And as much as we would like to believe that our Republican politicians are always on our side, we know that not to be true in a lot of cases. Joe Kent is a good example where he says a lot of things and he practices totally different things. You have to understand, for a long time, Dan Crenshaw had a lot of conservatives fooled. Dan Crenshaw had, people all the ways up to some of the more popular, influential people like Black Rifle Coffee, even some of the people that I follow, knowing as soon as he supported red flag laws that I was no longer going to be able to support Dan Crenshaw. People like Black Rifle Coffee and other influencers would say, hey, you don't know where you're coming from. You're taking some of the things he said out of context. And then 2 years later, instead of supporting Dan Crenshaw, they're calling him an asshole. Well, I'm telling you, this exact same thing is going to happen with Joe Kent. You have people like Mike Glover, Black Rifle Coffee, along many other people who would like to consider themselves moderate conservatives or libertarian conservatives or some kind of debacle between the two that are coming out in support of Joe Kent when he has already said things that would be counterproductive to that ideology. So I believe by the time 2024 gets here and it's already too late, after Joe Kent already wins his race, you will begin to see him start to implement some of the things that he is actually practicing and not some of the vocal jujitsu that he uses on these more conservative podcasts. So we really have to pay attention to that as well. And when you really think about it, for as much as we like to talk about this red wave that's coming in 2024, or just as soon as maybe even this November in 2022, we have everything going against us. There is truly only one political candidate that is running for the American people, and he is constantly under attack to the point, no matter how popular or how financially he is capable, he cannot do everything that he wants to do. And on top of that, he can't really trust anybody. Most of the Republicans that worked with Donald Trump only work with him up until the point they win their primary, and then maybe up until they win their race. But after that point, they begin to start to distance themselves from Donald Trump because they think that he is too decisive or divisive. And what we as American people really need to understand here is it doesn't really matter if you like Donald Trump or not. Do you like your bank accounts being in the positive? Do you like your 401k being at a point that you might have hopes to retire? Do you like seeing shortages now that Donald Trump is gone any and everywhere you look? Do you like how much control the DOJ, the FBI, the IRS has gained since Donald Trump has left office? Well, all of those things impact you much, much more than uh, Donald Trump hurting your feelings. So you're just going to have to get over your fucking self. And for as much as the libertarians want a true libertarian candidate to run for president and to have a real hope at winning, Donald Trump is as close as they're going to get. You have to remember that when Donald Trump announced he was going to run for president, he told the RNC, if you do not back me, I will run as an independent and I will win. That's because Donald Trump isn't really a Republican. He is more of a conservative, if anything else, but he is truly a good grasp and an image of what it looks like to be an America first politician. Now it's just how do we get normal citizens today to believe that America first politicians is what we need, not just as a president, but in all aspects of our government, because that is how we win. That is how we keep what we have. Because every time we don't have that, in every instance that we lose that, do you know who steps in? The Chinese government. And it is almost to the point where the Chinese government owns more of America and has more control over American politicians than actual Americans. Does your vote count if the Chinese can come in with $1 billion and influence the politicians to do certain things? They can allow you to vote in or to make sure they win a certain race that the people decide. And then, as soon as they have chosen or decided the victor of that race, that's when the Chinese party comes in. That's when the Chinese government comes in and says, here's $1 billion, sell us one third of your farmland. They don't do it before the race because they know if a politician is to run and say that we can get ourselves out of a lot of debt, but what we have to do to get out of that debt is sell one third of our farmland to China, they would not win that race. So that isn't going to happen. So once again, this is another scenario where it's going to be like a Dan Crenshaw or soon to be Joe Kent, where they talk a lot of shit that may sound wonderful, but what they do in practice is the total opposite. So and this goes back to what I was talking about a few days ago. We're just not going to be able to vote ourselves out of this issue because we don't know who we can trust anymore as politicians. And quite frankly, we can't trust any of them. So it doesn't matter who we vote for. They can be influenced in Congress by China, and we would never know the slightest difference until it is already too late. There are a lot of Democrats that are well, would like to think that they are pro-American, that they are moderates, and then they elect the very politicians that has allowed China to buy up and control so much of America. Those politicians did not run on the fact that they would be handing over so much power to China. They ran on democratic ideology and not really a point by point really defined principles and politics. That way, when they were in office, they could manipulate their words to trick their constituency into believing that they were doing something democratic when in all actuality, they were doing something to usher in communism faster than ever. So, quite frankly, any politician, any influencer, any YouTube channel that is talking about the way to save our country being in politicians' hands is illusional. They just don't understand how our system is set up right now. That's not to say that our republic is faulty, which I'm sure it has its faults, but that's not why we are where we are. We are where we are as a country because we allowed ourselves to steer so far away from what our republic was supposed to be at every sign of something scary. And coronavirus was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. Anything that we had in place that resembled what our republic was meant to be and what our constitution was meant to protect us from was shattered by the coronavirus and the response more so to the coronavirus. And just like I'm telling you, the Democratic politicians, just like I'm telling you, the Democrats that will soon to be running for Republicans, Fauci and the response to the coronavirus was 100% caused by the Chinese government and 100% controlled by the Chinese government. And the Chinese government was the one playing this project, this experiment of the American people. As much as we would like to think that the coronavirus response was a way for the federal government of the United States to see how complicit and compliant the American people was, it was truly to see how much China could come in and take over without the American people knowing. And so I don't think this has been ever so obvious than when you see people like Nancy Pelosi do the shit that she did the other week, where she can come in and say things like China is one of the freest countries we have. What was her intent there? Why would she say something like that? If she is supposed to be one of these great Democratic leaders that run as a Democrat and has held office for so long, yet we know that China is our greatest threat that is external to the United States. What what does she have to gain from saying some stupid ass shit like China is one of the freest states in our countries in the world? She doesn't. This is just planting the seed. This is planting the seed to people who are brainwashed by the Democrat Party to only believe what Democrats say. And this is also why they can change definitions. This is also why they can add shit to bills and just name them something fancy like Save America Act or Help Protect Kids from Guns Act. And instead of doing what those bills uh, would seem to promote, they'd shove a bunch of shit in there like doubling the budget for the IRS. So as far as politics are concerned, we are too far gone, and I don't necessarily that means that our country is too far gone. I believe we can still save it, and just like I was talking about the other day, it's just going to take something very drastic. And if we wish to keep things as close to what we have at this very moment, while getting rid of everything that is bad with what we have at the moment, it is going to have to be even more drastic. Because if we want to change the way our country is being ran right now, we would have to change a lot. But to only extract the more devastating things that is destroying our country, we would have to do something like go in and forcefully remove those politicians allowing that to happen. And the federal government is just not going to let that happen. So it's kind of a lose-lose scenario. Politics and the idea of how high we are holding our politicians today is soon to go the way of the dodo. You are going to have people that begin to hate all politicians and will not trust any politician. And quite frankly, the way things are in this country, that is how it should be. We should be looking up to people that are doing things in our communities. For those people who go out of their way to help their neighbors, whether just things like jumping, their car when it's broke down, maybe showing the single mother across the street how to change a tire. This is what we have to start doing in our communities to rebuild the culture in the United States. We have to start holding good people onto the podium that we are now holding politicians to. Because it doesn't matter who your favorite politician is, I promise you, they've done some shady shit. They've made it more easily for China to come and take some of our free land away. And they're not going to ever do anything to get back what we have lost. There is no Republican that has actual influential and meaningful power in Congress that is doing anything right now to regain the things that you have lost over the last 60, 50 years when it comes to your constitutional rights. There is nobody in big business, in big corporations, that will help fund politicians to do things to get what you have lost when it comes to your constitutional rights. And this is very, very apparent in the Abolish the ATF bill, where you actually had some of the more prominent and wealthier gun manufacturers come in and say that they support the ATF, that they look forward to working with the ATF to make sure that they are following all the guidelines. Do you know what those guidelines do? Because it is sure as shit not keep Americans safe. It is make law abiding citizens criminals overnight. Because the ATF has done for the last 10 years things that it has no business and no legislative power in doing. And as long as we keep putting the same politicians and worshiping the same people when it comes to these big corporations, nothing is going to change. If you want to see the change that it is going to take to get those constitutional rights back, you have to go out and spend your dollars with the companies and with the people that are coming out and saying the things that you aren't supposed to say. And that's what this podcast was about from day one. I could say abolish the ATF, but the saying abolish the ATF is only going to get so far in Congress. We need people that have the power and the influence and the training that can forcefully remove the ATF from our federal government. And we need to support those people. We need to share that information. And instead of looking at content creators that the only real way they have any control over the situation is to come out and say, we should be uh, actively and combatively fighting off the ATF, and that our governors should not allow ATF headquarters or agents into our states. We have to support those people as well. And that's, I think, where we're at today. Instead of saying we want to vote in Republicans that will use the FBI and the ATF to combat our enemy, and instead of voting for Democrats to say we are going to support and usher in an FBI and ATF culture that will dissolve the conservative ideology in the United States, we should be saying we need to do everything we possibly can in our power to defeat the ATF at every single turn. And it starts with our governors and our sheriffs keeping these fucktards out of our state. And as soon as we do that, then we can have enough room. The ATF and FBI will have such a limited amount of power that they can only do things in places like Washington, D.C., Massachusetts, and California. So then we can start to preserve and bring up the next generation in a culture where we do not accept that the ATF and the ATF and the FBI have the power that they hold today in America. I only wish that my children and my children's children grow up with the ideology that they should be beheading the heads of these agencies in the streets, in public squares, not in the middle of the night, not as a covert mission, but an overt mission to walk into FBI and ATF headquarters and say, we, the people, hereby dissolve this agency. And anyone and everyone that has a counter objective to that shall be executed by we, the people, for treason from this day forward. Now, obviously, we can't do that. Anybody that seems to even whisper those words are thrown into jail or have to add the words like in Minecraft. But that is truly what I hope for my children's generation and my children's generation, that they can go on to social media, that they can run for politicians in some kind of different political atmosphere where they can actually say shit that needs to happen without worrying about a political backlash and possibly even being thrown in jail for it. The politicians that we vote in office should not tippy toe around the fact that the FBI, the ATF, the IRS, and every other federal fucking agency that does not have jurisdiction in our states is abusing their power. Those politicians should not go in front of Congress and say, I hereby today say that the ATF has become tyrannical. Therefore, we should write some legislation that abolishes them and hands over their power to the next bullshit agency, but instead goes in front of Congress and says, we, the people, are deciding that the ATF and FBI hold no power over the American people, and the day that they come for any one of us, that will be the last day that those agents work for that agency until we have dismantled the entire federal bureaucracies that have taken advantage of us for the last 50 years. And the idea that just common moderate Americans do not believe in this and think that this is some kind of radical ideology is a fucking absurd. Do you think George Washington imagined that we would need so many fucking agencies spread out through the federal government that went after law-abiding, able body, or at least doing whatever they are able to do to be productive citizens of the United States? Do you really think he would have wanted agencies like the FBI and ATF to be targeting just law abiding citizens, kicking in their doors, shooting their dogs, stealing their property? Absolutely not. And that is why we just cannot trust and allow this political environment that we have today. And that's it. I started this podcast knowing that there was things that needed to be said that people didn't want to say. And I started it off with saying, well, I guess I will have to do my best to work around what needs said without saying it and support those people who are getting as close as they can to the line. And what I have learned is there are people out here that believe the very things that I just said. There are people making content and trying to push this idea as far politically as they possibly can. But the ones that are trying to do something else are standing in our way. The ones that worship their political party as if they were gods are in our way. That is why Christianity is so important to the American people, because whether you like to believe it or not, on any larger scale than one individual person, if you do not hold something higher than yourself, then you're probably a fucking narcissist and there's something wrong with you. You will always look to hold something higher. And the problem today is that we've made anything that has been proven over time to actually make good communities and good people evil. We have told people, we know that you are looking for your higher purpose. And even the atheist out there that don't believe in God or Christianity or any, other religion, even those people will tell you that the reason why kids go into schools and shoot up places, the reason why all these minorities are causing so much crime in the inner city and joining gangs is because those young men lack purpose in their life. Well, if they lack purpose in their life, then why do you constantly combat Christianity into these children and these young men's lives if it is something that has proven over time to build the best country in the world, to make better people, to have things like love thy neighbor, and all of these good moral and righteous things that we should be doing? Why? Why, if you know, whether you're Christian or not, why are you making Christianity out to be this evil fucking thing when you know that is what is causing the collapse of our society is lack of purpose. If our youth can find any purpose in anything that is bigger than themselves, you should let it happen. You should promote it happening, whether that's what you believe in or not. And I would almost guarantee if you would allow that to be the case, if you would allow any and everything that is a bigger and higher purpose than yourself to come into these youth's lives, and before they take a turn from the worst, before they grow old enough to have children themselves and get tossed in jail and create yet another single parent household, before all of that, you help them find any purpose without your personal beliefs interjecting into their path to finding that higher purpose. I would almost guarantee you it would be Christianity every single time. But instead, most Americans have fought Christianity any and everywhere it goes. It has kept it out of schools. It has made the moral things that they would like to pretend don't exist go away so that they can continue to chase after this lustful and evil lifestyle so that they don't feel bad about themselves. Most people today just don't want to believe in something higher, like a God or a religion, because they are afraid that it will conflict with the lifestyle that they have grown dependent on, and that they themselves, whether they are conscious of it or not, have grown to worship. If you are pushing away a higher purpose, if you are not allowing your children and other youths outside of your home search and find that purpose that will turn this country around because you are afraid that what you do when you close your doors at night is hypocrisy, then just focus on yourself for a second. Don't let the fucked up shit that you have to do to make your empty soul feel better about itself affect everyone else around you. Because that's what we have done as a country. We had, and I would almost imagine it started with politicians. It started with politicians that were cheating on their wives. It started on politicians that were stealing from their constituents. And they said that they no longer wanted to feel bad about what they were doing. Therefore, they will push Christianity away from their constituents. So when they get caught and they do the things that they have to do to make their fucking genitalia feel good, that they don't have to feel bad about it. And that is where the decline of our society started. If you can be an atheist, if you can have no other entity that is of higher purpose and cause than yourself, while maintaining and being a productive, good person in society, good for you. But I'm here to tell you that is not the majority of Americans today. There are whole fucking cities that will prove that statement to be true. When you go into cities like Compton out in California, you will see that what is in control of the youths and the younger generations of places like Compton and LA County out in California, it is not God. It is not a higher purpose. It is Gucci and designer. It is who can make the most money pushing the most dope, and not even to their enemies, but their own people. And even the ones who have Jesus peace chains and crosses tattooed on their arms, they are not holding someone like God and Jesus to a higher purpose and a higher cause. They are just using that for aesthetics, and that is not the fucking same. If they were using the pathway to righteousness and moralness, they would be doing the things that they do in cities like Compton and LA County. I didn't really mean to go off on a religious rant. I have a good feeling that a lot of the people that watched the podcast at the beginning have stopped watching because I kind of interject some of my Christianity and my beliefs. But I promise you, no matter who you listen to, whether it be podcast or influencers, in some shape or another, will tell you that a lot of the what is in the Bible, the Christian Bible, is what it takes to breed and maintain a good society, whether they believe that or not. And there are a lot of people that say one thing and do another. I agree. People like Ben Shapiro, where they'll come out and tell you that Christianity is a good thing for all people, but then try to get people to convert to Judaism. So I don't know, but I'm telling you that that's where it is. And I don't know anybody who actually knows what the fuck they are talking about that will tell you any different. Our politicians do not have a higher calling than themselves. They do not have a higher purpose than themselves. And the downfall effect from that is the youths and their constituency have no higher purpose, have no moral righteousness and calling to be a better citizen of the United States. And we are left with the aftermath of that. Why do you think when Trump came out on stage, he said things like, these people love their God? Because he knew that the good people in that crowd that were willing to do anything and everything to save their country had a higher purpose. He may not have said, Christianity specifically, but I guarantee you that's kind of what he had in his fucking head when he said it. So, we're almost at the hour mark. We didn't really get anybody to comment. I can do this if you guys want. I know sometimes it entices people to comment if they can see their comments on the screen. I can do that. So if something that you're wanting to talk about and you want to make sure that I see it, I can split the screen where your comment comes out on the page. That's kind of what I was wanting to do today, is kind of maybe talk about some of the issues that other people are paying attention to, because everything I'm paying attention to always comes back around to the same thing. There's no higher purpose, no higher cause, no moral righteousness in our country. Our politicians are pushing God out of everything because they want to feel good when they shut their door at night and molest children, and that has a trickle down effect into our youth, and then those youths go and join gangs and shoot up schools, when all we had to do was find somebody who actually believed in God running for political office and voted for them. That's all we had to do. And now it's too late for that. So it's always more of the same. Uh, Moral decay in our society. No purpose for our youth to actually try to be better people in our society. So now we're fucked. Now we're not going to change things with politicians. And like I said, even if you think Donald Trump is going to defeat the Democratic Party and what they're trying to do to him, is as soon as it is visibly clear that that's going to happen, the Republicans will go after him. And I've already told you, not a lot of people are talking about the RNC already threatening Donald Trump with the fact that they'll stop paying his legal fees. What the hell? I think that was my alarm. Stop paying his legal fees the day he announces that he's going to run for president in 2024. If that isn't a clear picture that the RNC is not going to back Trump across the finish line, I don't know what is. So sure, Liz Cheney lost her primary. But how do we know that the new politicians that are taking the rhino seats aren't actually Democrats or will actually back Trump in the long run. You know how many people were backed by Trump and only won their races because of Trump have then flip-flopped on him? So I don't think that's going to get us anywhere either. I'm going to check something just in case, make sure that the comments on the actual platforms being Facebook and YouTube are actually empty, and then I'm probably going to hop off here if nobody has nothing they want to talk about, because it is hot as hell in here. Yeah, we don't got no comments, so we're at the hour mark. I'm going to hop off here. Same as always, guys. Stay safe, stay prepared. I love you guys. God bless America first.